Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of a little experiment that I'm calling Nervous Breakdowns. This is a podcast in which I'm going to try to answer your questions about psychology, mental health, relationships, basically anything you want to know. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, who died and made you king of knowing stuff? Well, nobody. I don't claim to know everything, but I do know some stuff. For example, I'm a nationally certified counselor. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of New Jersey. I have master's degrees in clinical psychology and counseling psychology, and more than 10 years in the field of mental health. Now, you just heard my list of credentials, and in that list, you did not hear professional broadcaster. So I'm going to do stupid non-broadcastery things like stutter, say oohs and ahs, clear my throat on the mic and all that stuff, but that's okay. This is a little project that I'm doing to try to create something and hopefully answer some questions. So as I answer these questions, I'm going to be learning about it as well. So I'm doing my own research. I'm really trying to use articles that I find and some of my own experience and my own thoughts on the issue, and just generally to kind of do something that might be a little informative and a little bit entertaining. So how did I get these questions? Well, I hope to hear from you guys at the end of the show. I'll put my email and my Twitter handle and all that stuff. But I basically went on my Facebook and asked a bunch of my friends if they wanted to know anything. And I've got such a cool range of questions. Some of them were pretty technical, like how to treat certain kinds of mental illnesses and how certain mental illnesses, what the recovery rates are, how people can get better. And some of them were kind of more light, more fun. So I thought I'd start with a more light and fun question, and I might go back and forth between some more inside mental health questions and some more, kind of poppy, fun stuff. But I really wanted to do this one because I thought it would be fun to demonstrate how research can answer a bunch of questions we have. Also, I kind of have this philosophy that things tend not to be as complicated as we think they are. If we just kind of use our brains a little bit and think things through clearly, we can come up with solutions with most of the problems that we face in our lives. So this question came from a bunch of friends that I have who wanted to know basically a wide range of dating questions. These are a group of girls that I know who are in their, I think, mid to late 20s. And in a Facebook conversation, they wanted to know a bunch of pretty funny questions. But the main one was, why do guys like bitches? And I thought that was pretty interesting question. And furthermore, I wanted to see if I could come up with an answer. I wanted to know if that was true. So how did I approach the question? Basically, I did a lot of researching. I did a lot of checking into some online periodical websites. And I guess I had to start with the question, is that true? I mean, is it true that men like bitches? What's a bitch? I don't even know. I mean, I'm a guy. I have guy friends, and never once has one of my guy friends come up to me and brag to me about how nasty the girl he was dating was. And believe me, some of my guy friends have definitely dated nasty girls, but then usually the relationships worked out because they either weren't aware about it or they were ignoring it. So it hasn't been my experience that guys intentionally like to date bitches. Now, I'm sure there's some out there. I mean, you got masochists and all kinds of people who are into some kinky stuff. So I imagine that there's a guy or two who does enjoy a bitch for sure. But I don't think that that's something that's kind of universally accepted as something that guys like. So what do I know? Maybe my group of friends is weird. So I actually did some research, and there was there's a bunch of studies on mate selection, and I found this one from 1986 from these researchers from the University of Michigan who studied like 92 married couples and, looked at the qualities that the men and the women looked for in their partners. Found that men wanted qualities such as this: physically attractive, good looking, good cook, frugal. Frugal, that's an odd one. I don't know if I'd necessarily look for that in a partner, but I found a more recent one from 2013 here from some researchers in the University of Singapore that looked at speed dating and found that men generally look for some pretty similar things, look like for physical attractiveness and good sense of humor and all that stuff. But absent from both of these is at no point was bitchiness mentioned as one of the top things that they look for. In fact, having a bad attitude was something that was considered a really big turnoff. An interesting finding was that when the men were asked to consider, both men and women were asked to consider the length of the relationship, the longer term the relationship was going to be, the less physical attractiveness mattered. So, like if they were looking for a one night stand or a hookup, it was all about the looks. But the longer if they were looking at a wife or a more long term partner, it's definitely shifted to more like personality characteristics and not their looks. So, I don't know that necessarily bitchiness is a quality that men seek. So I ended up following up the question with my friend that asked me, and I wanted to know, what was she really asking? I mean, what was her experience that made her think that guys like bitches? And what she described was she tended to find that guys go after girls who tend not to pay that much attention to them, where she almost felt like it was counterproductive to put in time to do favors for the men that she liked, to get them things or cook for them. And she felt like after their relationship didn't work out between her and these men, that the women they dated after tended to be these more aloof or less interested women. So it got me thinking about the way that women perceive each other, and I found a bunch of cool research about that. So as it turns out, and this is probably, I hate the stereotype, but this might be some common knowledge, but women tend to perceive their competition as being bitchy, no matter what that person actually does. I found a lot of research to support that too. For example, this really cool article I found was this article where they took a bunch of research subjects, these college students, women that volunteered to do a study. And the women were told that they would be taking a computer class or something. So they were sent into a computer lab with another person who happened to be a research assistant, but they didn't know. At some point, as they're waiting for the professor to enter the room for this supposed computer class, another girl enters. Now, this new girl that's entering is also a research assistant, and she was coming in with a script where she's basically asking, where's the professor? Can they give her directions to where the professor is? The difference is, half the time this new girl comes in and she's dressed conservatively like a college student, and half the time she's dressed really sexually provocatively with like a short skirt and a low-cut top, those kinds of things. She's saying the same words, behaving the same, but her dress is different. And the researchers observed the college student who thought she was being part of a study and their reaction to this girl that's coming in. And they found that when the new student comes in dressed sexy, the women who were part of the study were openly antagonistic to them. They would roll their eyes or scoff. As soon as the girl would leave the room, they turned to the other partner in the room and make a nasty comment about them. One of the research participants was actively gave her the wrong directions intentionally to try to get her lost. So it's really interesting when we start to talk about why men date bitches. Are men really dating bitches, or do women think that any competition is bitchy? It's an interesting question. There's also a lot of research to suggest that women, more than men, reject women that they think are promiscuous. So I found this other study where they ask a bunch of college students, men and women, to rate other students of the same gender. So a bunch of men rating men on their level of sexual permissiveness is what they call it, but basically how sexually active they are. And women who rated other women on their level of sexual permissiveness. Then they asked, would they be friends with that person? And the women universally would not be friends with somebody who they thought was more sexually permissive than they are. So, in other words, if a woman perceives another woman as being slutty, she is not going to be friends with her, according to this study. Men weren't so selective. So like a sexually conservative man would be friends with a sexually liberal guy, with one exception. If the sexually conservative man has a girlfriend and thought that the guy was a threat, he wouldn't want to be friends. So there is that. But women, boyfriend or no boyfriend, did not want to be friends with another woman who they thought was going to be very sexually active. So the real question, as we get through this, is not necessarily do men like bitches, because I don't really think that that's true. I think that men are just like women and like a partner who likes them, or who like a partner who wants to be with them or treats them nice and makes them feel good. So is it true that, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. I also see that there is a book by this woman named Sherry Argov that's called Why Men Marry Bitches, okay? Now, I haven't read the book. I'm going to be honest about that. I've not read it, but I've read a lot of book reviews, and universally, they describe that this book is not really about men that like bitches. What they describe as bitchy is a cluster of behaviors, such as women who make their own plans, or women who don't let their men win all the time, or who have their own life. And I particularly don't see those behaviors as being bitchy. I really think that they're, I guess, assertive. I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural bias we have in the United States where a woman's not supposed to behave that way. And I mean, if I would expect a man to make his own plans and not to let his woman win all the time, or to have his own life. In fact, I would hope so. I would think that a man who didn't do those things would be kind of a turnoff to most women. So as I was reading that, these kind of behaviors, and she describes that as bitchy. Although, as I said, I didn't read the book, and I think that that's kind of her tagline. I don't really think she thinks it's bitchy, but I think that that's what other women might perceive that way. I'm realizing that it's not really about being bitchy. I'm realizing that it's really men are preferring women who are clear about what they want and are clear about their boundaries, and who are not going to be annoyingly clingy, basically. So what's really going on here? I mean, if a woman is feeling like she's constantly being outcompeted by other women, I'm wondering if it's really more about that person's individual self and not necessarily the other woman. The fact of the matter is, needy women are exhausting, okay? Now, this is going to get into some kind of pretty core counseling ideas here, and I want to establish some things. In human psychology, we have the ability to know things without thinking about it. Now, I'm going to give an example, and this is a thought experiment. I don't actually want you to do it, but I want you to think about what I'm about to say. Take your cell phone, your brand new Note 3 or Galaxy S4 or iPhone 5 or whatever it is that you have, and I want you to imagine holding it out at arm's length. And I want you to imagine that I tell you to drop it. What would you say to me? I'm going to give you a hint. The correct answer is no. In fact, the correct answer is probably hell no, right? Why? Because it's expensive. Now, this is the question I have. How long did it take you to come up with that answer? Nothing, right? Like not even a fraction of a second. I want you to think about all the information you had to know in order to come up with that answer. No. When you drop a phone, what happens to it? Gravity pulls on it. It falls to the earth. What happens when it hits the earth? It breaks. What's that going to do? It's going to cost you money. Exactly. So you had an idea of the consequence of letting it go on several levels, on an immediate, like physical level, what's going to happen to it, what's going to be the cost to you of that. This is what I'm talking about. You had the ability to know something without thinking about it, okay? Why do we have this ability? Because it's really important to have that. Sometimes we have to make quick decisions, and if you had to stick around, for example, and think about all the consequences of a car hitting you as you're crossing the street, you wouldn't live very long. Okay, so I think that that's a pretty good demonstration of how we can automatically know things. Now, there's a caveat. The thing that we automatically know has to be correct in order for us to make good decisions about our lives. Okay, so as you're crossing the street, if you see a car coming, if your automatic thought is, "Wow, that's really going to tickle me when it hits me," again, it's going to be bad news for you. So we have this for all of the areas of our lives, and sometimes we have this about ourselves. We have this kind of automatic belief about ourselves. Now, when our automatic belief or our core belief is, "I'm not good enough," that's really going to make a lot of differences in the way we perceive things, in the way we make choices. We can always dispute that. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for what? All right. I'm not good enough to play NBA basketball. That's true in my case. Of course, I'm not good enough. I'm not that tall. I'm not that athletic. I don't really play basketball very much. So if my question for myself is, am I good enough to play NBA basketball? No. Astoundingly, absolutely no. That's not the case. Okay. But what are we really asking ourselves when we ask ourselves about dating? Am I good enough to date? Am I good enough for somebody to care about me? Well, what determines who's good enough? Geez, Hitler had a girlfriend, right? Now, don't take that to mean that if Hitler can have a girlfriend, and you can't, or a boyfriend, then you're awful. But I don't think the qualifications for dating are very high, But I want to look at the impacts of these thoughts. So as you're having the thought, "I'm not good enough," again, you're not walking around thinking that, but that's your underlying belief for a lot of these decisions. And you're dating somebody, and they don't call you when they're supposed to. If your first thought is, "I'm not good enough," what is that going to lead you to think? That they're seeing somebody else? That they're off doing something they shouldn't be doing? All kinds of stuff. What if you have the thought that I'm not good enough, and I don't know, your partner doesn't show up when they're supposed to? Again, same thing. I don't know. I'm not good enough. They didn't show up because they're not that interested in me. And so what happens is you're going to turn into a clingy, needy partner. You're going to constantly need reassurance. You're going to have what they call a tension and release cycle. You're going to have insecurity about your partner. You're going to look at them and you're going to feel like they don't like you that much. So it's going to make you anxious. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable to think that. So then you're going to talk to your partner. "Do you like me?" And your partner's going to say, "Of course I do, sweetheart. Yeah, of course, I wouldn't be here if I didn't." That reinforcement's going to make you feel better, right? So you're going to have tension and it's going to release it for you, all right? Then a few minutes later, you're going to have the thought again, "Well, he's just probably saying that to make me feel good. He doesn't want to hurt my feelings." So you say, "Are you sure? Are you sure you're really not going to go somewhere? You're not going to go see anybody else?" "Of course not. I'm here, aren't I? I'm here for you. I love you. I want to be with you." Okay? So what happens is you fall into this behavioral pattern where you have tension, you have anxiety, it's uncomfortable. You ask the question for reassurance. The reassurance then relieves your anxiety, which is reinforcing. It makes it more likely for you to ask the question again. And before you know it, you are constantly seeking reassurance and support from your partner. And ladies, it's exhausting. Sometimes a guy just wants to be able to not have to do all that work. And if you're one of these types of women, your guy is not going to stick around, okay? He's going to go for the more confident girl, for the girl who sets limits, has boundaries, lives her own life, okay? Not that because she's a bitch, of course not, but because the guy does not want to constantly have to prove something. It gets exhausting. Another thing, playing hard to get. Playing hard to get is something that we talk about quite a bit. And the fact of the matter is it works. Okay? I found a great study. It looks at playing hard to get from an economic standpoint. What's economics? Supply and demand, right? When we see something that doesn't have a lot of supply, we value it more. You don't see Rolexes and Ferraris every day, at least not around here where I live, right? So when you see one, it's special. It's a desirable object. The part of the thing that makes it desirable is its rarity. Chevrolets we see all the time. Hondas we see all the time. They're nice cars, but they're not exotic. They're not desirable. So when you have a partner that you're seeing that doesn't, cling to you and throw themselves at you constantly, it makes you want it, makes you go after it more. There's also a lot of evolutionary psychology studies that look at the desirability of somebody who's difficult to get. And men value a woman that's more difficult to get, especially when I can get you, but my friends can't. All right. Now, evolutionary psychology is a whole nother topic. It's a really interesting form of psychology because it looks at the evolutionary adaptation, why we have certain behaviors. You know, according to evolutionary psychologists, everything that we experience, everything that we go through emotionally, behaviorally, is all tied to our ability to reproduce. How likely is it for us to have children? Does this behavior make it more likely that I'm going to reproduce or less likely? So when men look at women and they see a woman that's difficult to get, let me back up a second. When a woman has a kid, she knows it's hers. She knows it's hers because it comes out of her, right? So independent of who the father is, that woman knows it's her baby. It's her responsibility to raise it. A man, in order for a man's genes to be successful, he needs to know that the baby he's raising is his own. Why would I raise a kid that's not mine? No, again, we're talking from an evolutionary perspective here. This is very black and white. People raise other people's kids. We love other people's children. That's a different story. So we're going to leave that alone for now. But in general, from an evolutionary standpoint, it takes a lot of resources to raise a kid. I have to protect that child. I have to feed it. I have to put clothes on his back. And those resources, if I'm putting those into a kid that I think is mine, but's not, my genes are not going to propagate. I'm raising somebody else's kid, and their genes are going to be successful. So, as a man, I need to know that my partner, my mate, is trustworthy. I need to know that she doesn't sleep with everybody. I want to know that, and I have to trust her, I want to know that the kid that she's going to have with me is going to be mine. And the only way I can know that is on the strength of her character. So when a woman plays hard to get, she's kind of demonstrating that. She's kind of demonstrating that she doesn't just sleep with everybody. That's important. That's important. Forget psychology for a second. That's important from an evolutionary standpoint, because a man who sees that woman that's playing hard to get is more likely to see her as a potential long-term partner. Again, we take the psychology out of it, although an evolutionary psychologist would probably argue that the psychology is all a part of it, right? I mean, how many times have we had or heard stories or experienced where people have a one-night stand and the guy never calls again, right? Well, think about it. If I can sleep with you on the first night, I can sleep. You'll sleep with everybody on the first night. You're not a good long-term partner for me. So the guy may say that he's looking for a long-term relationship leading up to it, and he's probably not lying. I mean, I don't really think that most men are sociopaths where they're lying to people to get what they want. I really think that when people, 99% of the time, when people say things, they really mean it. So you find that this holds true. You know, there's a really good book called The Moral Animal by this guy named let me see where I wrote it down. Robert Wright. I want to say it's Robert Wright. But anyway, he looks at morality and how it develops from evolutionary psychology. It's really cool. But anyway, he says that in general, all of our behaviors are related to our ability to reproduce somehow, and it follows this kind of pattern. So I'm just saying these things to support the idea that it seems to me like a hard-to-get woman is going to be a more likely to be considered a long-term mate by a guy. Now, again, I'm not trying to pass judgment. If your interest in a guy is to go have sex with him, go have sex with him. There's no right or wrong answer. The issue is that 99% of the time when I see a girl who feels bad or feels like she was taken advantage of, it's not because she had the sex, but because the relationship didn't follow. That's what I think. You need to really have this goal in mind. I mean, if you're interested in somebody, ask yourself what you want. Do you want a one-night stand? If so, great, go for it. If you're looking for a boyfriend, you have to do things that we know lead to that. You know, part of it is setting clear limits. Do you want to have sex with somebody that's not your boyfriend? If not, don't do it. Don't have sex with this guy until you've established that there's a commitment or some monogamy. Do you want to meet their families? Are you looking for marriage? There's always this big discomfort where we don't want to say that we're looking for marriage. We don't want to scare the person off. Why? Why can't we be upfront? If marriage is what you're interested in, if you're interested in raising a family, be clear about it. Don't kind of progress along the relationship with ambiguity, and then, a month down the road, 2 months down the road, you realize you guys don't want any of the same things. And then, of course, the relationship's going to fall apart. Let me back up for a second, too. Evolutionary psychology is not the only theory. There's other theories. There's a guy named Christopher Ryan who wrote a book called Sex at Dawn, where he basically says that human beings evolved in such a way that men and women have sex, communally. Communities raise children together, that there's kind of a lot of promiscuity in these small social groups, and that monogamy is a kind of a fairly recent construct. I don't know. I haven't read that book, but I don't know how well accepted it is, but I just wanted to offer that the thing I just said is not the only idea on this subject, okay? So, if I can kind of bring it back to some ideas, if you find that men that you've been interested have liked bitches, and I think that we've done a pretty solid job of explaining that, again, no man I know likes a woman who's truly bitchy. Well, consciously anyway. Again, I've had some friends that have dated some real nasty girls, but I don't think they knew about it. But what you're seeing is men that are dating women that are hard to get, who are independent, who are assertive. Why not be that? There's nothing wrong with that. This idea of let's see where things go in the relationship is kind of bullshit. Maintain your boundaries. Be clear about your expectations. Try to avoid being that clingy, exhausting partner that I don't think any men really like. And identify within yourself if you have these beliefs that are driving you to behave this way. If your belief is, I'm not good enough, why? Stop it. You're not good enough for what? Again, like I said, the worst people in history have had partners that have been married and had children. So it's not a question of your character being good enough. It's a question of, you just haven't met the right person yet, or you haven't done the right things. Okay? Be the bitch. Be the bitch. If you want a partner, be the bitch. If being bitchy means being assertive, if it means having clear expectations, and if it means being independent. Okay? Men and women want the same things. Men and women want partners that are interested in them, that interest them, that make them feel good, that don't exhaust them, that don't require a lot of work to be with. If a man is telling you things that don't seem to make sense, if a man's behavior and his words don't match a man or a woman's behaviors and words, you got to go with the behaviors. I want to be with you, but you're never with me. So you really don't want to be with me. Think about that. Think about having an expectation, having goals, and not accepting less than that. That's the important part of this. And sometimes you're going to have to do some self-exploration to get there. You're going to have to figure out what you want. The traditional marriage, traditional family is not for everybody. Some people are okay with raising a family without marriage. Some people don't want children at all. There's no right or wrong answer. There's only the right or wrong answer for you. And so, once you've identified what that is, and guys, there's nothing written in stone. You may think you know what you want and realize later you don't. Change your mind. It's fine. Okay? But you should always be consciously working towards that, and you should be clear about what you want with your partners, men and women. The worst thing that happens is when the expectations aren't clear and there's confusion. I have a day job, so I don't often get to watch daytime TV. But one of the coolest shows that I watch is People's Court, all right? Now, People's Court if you sit and watch it, can teach you a lot of life lessons. For example, the importance of setting boundaries and expectations beforehand. 99% of the cases that go before the judge in people's court are people who had ambiguity in their relationships. Money changes hands. Is it a loan or is it a gift? We have a contract. What is the contract? You're going to do this job for me. I'm going to pay you this. But I thought it was this. And so people end up going to court because they don't have clear boundaries. They don't have clear expectations of what they want. This is important in relationships too. Life lessons come out of people's court, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here, okay? But what I'm saying is you will find that the more clear you are with the expectations, the more you'll understand how to proceed in relationships, and the more you'll understand what the relationship is for. Your partner will appreciate it, you will appreciate it, and there won't be any confusion. So just some stuff to think about, guys. We're not talking about men liking bitches. I think that that's a clear thing. Again, and I have to put this caveat, I'm sure there's some guys out there that dig bitches. There's all kinds of kinky people out there. But I hope that with this little discussion and with some of the research that I found, I've been able to give some ideas that you can work on. Now, listen, guys, sometimes we have stuff that we really need to sit down with somebody that's a professional and work on together. And I encourage you to get some counseling. Counseling is great for everybody. I mean, it's what I do for a living. What we just did is not counseling. It's not even really advice. It's just kind of information. But you can work and sit down and work through people with, on some of the behaviors that you're having, some of the beliefs, and identify and correct some of these things in such a way that you're actually going to come out and be the kind of person you can be proud of. It takes work and it takes time, and you're going to sit and maybe scratch the surface on some stuff that's uncomfortable to talk about, but it's worth it. Okay? So just go on Google and look for your neighborhood community mental health center if you're strapped for cash. If not, look and see who your insurance will pay for. There's counselors all over. The state of New Jersey has a pretty good counseling system, good licensing. So that's it. So I appreciate your time, guys. I hope this was enjoyable for you. I plan to do this kind of semi-regularly. I'm still learning this whole podcasting thing. I had to learn how to make a graphic design, which you might see on the album cover for this thing. It's very basic. It looks like a child did it, but it took me over an hour. But thank you so much for stopping by. I am interested in any questions you have. I really want to hear your thoughts. I want feedback. The next show I'm going to do is going to be on enabling and how we know when we're enabling somebody. So that one's going to be a little bit more serious, a little bit more mental health oriented. But I really want to hear questions. I want to hear some interesting feedback, and you can reach me a couple of ways for that. I have an email address. My email address is breakdownswithgino @hotmail.com. BREAKDOWNS with Gino, Gino, @hotmail.com. I also have a Twitter handle, Breakdowns with G. So you can tweet me at Breakdowns with G. I'm happy to hear that. And I would really appreciate it if you share this with a friend. If you liked it and you want to hear it, you want to share, you want some of your friends to hear it, please share it by all means. I want other people to hear it as well. As I said, this is a little project. I felt the need to create something, and I want to keep it going. So please bring your questions. And thanks again, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.